Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we'll be comparing two of the best OLED TVs on the market right now, the Sony A95K and the Samsung S95B, to find out which one is the best buy. Both these TVs use the same new quantum dot-infused OLED panel technology, and they both put out excellent picture quality, but the similarities end there. Everything from design to sound quality to gaming features, and the price is significantly different. So, can the Samsung S95B stand against the pricier Sony A95K? Hey, let's find out. For more information and updated prices, check the links in the description box below. In terms of design, the most obvious difference in these TVs is the stand. This only means something if you are stand mounting the TV, and if you are, take a look at the Samsung S95B and its central pedestal stand. It's stable enough, allows a little room for a slim soundbar, and perhaps most important, is going to fit on just about any media stand thanks to its small footprint. By comparison, the Sony S95K demands a fairly big media stand. The pedestal, if you want to call it that, runs the entire width of the TV and runs fairly deep behind the TV if you place the pedestal at the back. You can also have the pedestal oriented towards the front of the TV, so the TV can sit flush against a wall if you like, but depth requirements remain the same regardless. The Sony doesn't need to offer much in terms of cable management because it's going to hide whatever is behind it. But the Samsung has a little room with a view, so for that TV, you'll route cables down along the back of the pedestal and cover it up with an included cover plate. If you're wall mounting, suddenly the visual difference between these two TVs are more subtle. Both of them have super thin display panels, and both have a bit of a bump out on the back. Sony's take up more real estate on the back surface, but the depth of the bump out between the two is the same. So even with the tightest of wall mounts, you'll have a little bit of a gap between the TV's panel and the wall. From the front, they're both attractive TVs. Though I'll point out the Sony has a strip toward the bottom that's a bit larger than the strip on the bottom of the Samsung. If I were including the stand, then I'd prefer the Sony. While Sony's design is less practical, it has some sort of modernist approach. By all rights, the Samsung S95B's design is far more practical and could be the better choice for most people. Now let's talk HDMI inputs. The Samsung S95B supports the HDMI 2.1 bandwidth on all 4 ports, while the Sony has 2 high bandwidth ports, one of which also has the eARC port. Think very carefully about whether this is really a big deal to you. Do you have enough gear that supports 4K 120Hz HDR VRR output to need more than 2 HDMI 2.1 ports? Set aside the argument that if you pay this much for a TV, then you should get all of the latest stuff, and instead consider your actual needs. If the answer is yes, you do need 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, and that's more important than anything else, well, then I guess you're done with this comparison. I will, however, point out that there are AV receivers that offer multiple HDMI 2.1 ports and can make accommodating lots of high-end gear a bit easier. Otherwise, both have the apps you need, and those apps perform well on both TVs. As far as sound quality, the Sony A95K is the clear winner here, but that's because the A95K's onboard sound quality is just insanely good. The Samsung S95B sounds extremely good in its own right. I doubt anyone would be anything less than impressed with how it sounds. It's just that the A95K boasts beefy subwoofer output, and the fact that the screen is the speaker system. It just can't be matched. I think it's the best sounding TV on the market. However, both TVs offer a feature that allows them to play nicely with outboard audio systems. Samsung offers Q Symphony sound, which lets the TV add height and presence to the audio presentation when combined with the Samsung soundbar. Meanwhile, the Sony A95K can act as the center channel with a system like the Sony HT-A9, or with any AV receiver. Just run the center channel speaker wire into the speaker terminals on the back. All in all, for sound, it's a win for the Sony A95K, but the Samsung S95B is no slouch. Now let's talk about some features that I would consider non-essential, but nice add-ons nonetheless. The first is Samsung's TV Plus, which is really just free internet TV presented as a list of channels you can flip through. The nice thing here is that you don't have to be concerned about whether it comes from Tubi or Pluto or the Roku channel or whatever. It's just content you can watch. Simply then, there's Samsung Ambient Mode, which converts the TV into an art display. Some artwork is free, but there are something like 2,000 works available if you want to buy some. Also, even though it isn't as convincing as Samsung's The Frame, Samsung's ambient mode really is about just looking like art. Whereas with the Sony, you get Google's TV screensavers, which always have some sort of text at the bottom. Finally, Samsung appeals to gamers with a dedicated gaming dashboard, which is not something you get with Sony right now. On the Sony side is Bravia Core, which offers some of the highest fidelity video and audio available to stream. If you don't have a 4K Blu-ray player, this is about as good as it gets for showing off your TV. It's mostly Sony Pictures content, but there are some winners in there. Also, it's worth pointing out that Sony is one of the last brands out there putting out 4K Blu-ray players. So if you like seamless integration, Sony has that. Then there's the Bravia Cam. This comes in a box with the TV, and the port for it is integrated right in the back so you don't have to run a USB cable for it. It can tell you if you are sitting too close to the TV, act as a video camera, and optimize the picture quality in the room, presumably better than the built-in sensor you find on many TVs out there. When it comes to picture quality performance, both offer excellent handling and acceleration. It's just that one just edges out the other by a tiny bit in a couple of areas. In most measurable areas, these two TVs are neck to neck. Color accuracy, color volume, off-angle performance, glare reduction, motion resolution. The only areas where these TVs seem to diverge are how they handle brightness and shadow detail. By measurements alone, the Samsung appears to offer slightly brighter highlights in some cases, while it also tends to crush blacks just the tiniest bit versus the Sony. But in side-by-side comparison, whether watching SDR or HDR10 content, the Sony appears brighter. Its HDR pops just a bit more. The subjective perceptual evaluation deviates a bit from the objective, but there is one area in which these TVs will diverge a bit more significantly, and that's anytime it comes down to Dolby Vision versus HDR10. When watching, it will be in Dolby Vision on the Sony because the Sony supports it, and it'll be in HDR10 on the Samsung because it doesn't support Dolby Vision, and the title is not yet available in HDR10+. So that isn't an option. In this case, the Sony is brighter and a bit more vibrant. The APL is up a bit, and the highlights are a bit punchier. This will vary a bit depending on the content, but what I want to point out is that this is less a Samsung versus Sony performance consideration and more an HDR10 versus Dolby Vision consideration. With Sony, you'll get Dolby Vision, and with Samsung, you won't. Whether you prefer Dolby Vision or think Dolby Vision offers a real benefit a high percentage of time is up to you. Before I get to the conclusion, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon for this video. Overall, price aside, both of these TVs offer excellent performance and features. It all comes down to personal preference. Personally speaking, here's how I see it. If cost was no object for me, I'd pick up the Sony all day, every day, no question. But in this particular battle, I have to call a clear winner. And for me, and I suspect for most people, the Samsung S95B is the smarter pick. And in the end, it's all about the money. For more information and most updated prices, check the links in the description box below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to check out our previous video about the top 5 best 4K TVs or a previous comparison between the LG G2 and Sony A95K.